Today we're going to make every man's favorite dish, which is meatloaf. Meatloaf is great because it's a really good, feel-good meal, and it's also great leftover for sandwiches or fried up for breakfast or lunch. It's just really good reheated. So today's meatloaf. Now I've got a really easy meatloaf recipe, and we're going to start off with making the meatloaf and then go on to something that makes meatloaf special, which is onion gravy, which is also very easy. Starting off with the meatloaf, you're going to need 3/4 cup of water, 2 pounds of lean ground beef, 2 eggs. You're going to need a package of Lipton onion soup mix. You're going to need some ketchup and 3/4 cup of dry breadcrumbs. We're going to start off the recipe with a liberal internal application of red wine, and we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Once we finish making the meatloaf, we're going to make the onion gravy while the meatloaf is cooking in the oven. And so now a little secret. This recipe actually comes from the Lipton soup site on the internet. It's called a Superior, S-O-U-P-E-R-I-O-R, meatloaf. So I stole the recipe, but easy is easy, so we're going to use it. Okay, the first thing I'm doing with very well washed hands, because you're going to be handling your food, is I'm going to put 2 pounds of lean ground beef into my mixing bowl. And I'm just going to kind of mush it down and make a bit of a well for the rest of the ingredients in the center. Then I'm going to add about 3/4 cup of dried breadcrumbs. You can also use 5 chopped up fresh bread slices if you want, but I like the dry breadcrumbs because they're easier. I'm going to put in 3/4 cup of water. I'm going to put in 1/3 cup of ketchup. 2 eggs. And 1 package of Lipton onion soup mix. Okay, now that that's all in the bowl, the secret is just to mix it up until it's nicely blended. Now you like to do that by folding the meat over in half over on top of it several times until you've got a well-mixed mixture. Get a regular bread loaf pan, get some Pam and just spray it on it. And then just form your meat into the loaf pan just thusly. I've got the loaf nicely shaped and pushed a little indentation all the way around it just in case a bit of fat comes out, and then I'm going to place it in my 350 degree oven where it will sit for about an hour. While we've got the hour to go for the meatloaf to cook, we're going to make the addition to the meatloaf that turns it from a meal into a fine meal, which is onion gravy. The ingredients for onion gravy are flour, bouillon mix, you can use Bovril or any other brand name you like, some margarine, some onion, and 2 cups of water. You've got to get the onion ready. We're going to use most of this onion because I like my onion gravy with lots of onions, so we're just going to cut the ends off and peel it. Once your onion's peeled, you can slice it. I just like to cut it in half because we don't need rings for this. We just need very thin slices. About 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch is fine. And we're going to do all of that half and a bit of the other half. Okay, we're going to start off. I've taken 4 tablespoons of flour, which I'm going to put in something that you can put a lid on and shake. And then you can put 2 cups of cold, must be cold water, on top of the flour. And you need to have at least 1 inch or 2 of airspace. And again, something you can shake, so you put the lid on real tight because you're going to be shaking it. Make sure it's sealed all the way around, and then give it a good shake for quite a while because you need that flour totally mixed in with no lumps. We're ready to start putting our gravy together. So for the onion gravy, first thing you want is about 2 tablespoons of margarine or butter in a hot frying pan. Make sure you got it nice and hot to start with. You can tell this is hot enough because look at that margarine sizzle. Once you got the margarine sizzling like that, just throw your onion on top of it. And the trick is to keep that hot and cooking until the onions are a little bit brown. So you're just going to keep stirring it and give it an occasional flip until the onions are really soft and pick up a bit of brown color. Okay, the onions have been cooking for about 4 to 5 minutes, and you see how they're just getting a nice bit of brown and they're nice and soft. That's the way you want them. So take your flour and water mixture and just give it another good shake in case it's settled out. And then you're just going to carefully open it up and slowly pour it into the pan. And then you're going to add a tablespoon and a half of the beef bouillon. It's a good idea to give it a shake, whether it's Balver or whatever the bouillon mix. So exactly 1 1/2 tablespoon of beef bouillon. And then give it...
You measured that very precisely, I noticed.
Of course, it's critical. And just give it a mix. And you'll see the color start to come from the beef bouillon. And the flour makes it thicken up pretty quick. Now the key rule here is, once you get it thickened like that, is turn the heat down on your frying pan and let it cook for at least 10 minutes, because that cooks the flavor of the flour out.
Do you put a cover on it?
No, it's just fine if you keep the heat low to simmer. The flour's cooked for almost 5 minutes now, and what you want to do is just give it a little taste, and it's going to be hot, so be careful, and find out if it's beefy enough. I like mine a bit beefier than that, so we're going to add another 1/2 tablespoon of Bovril. There we go. Last ingredient for our gravy is a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Stir it in, and at this point the gravy is pretty well done. So you can just turn the heat off and leave it go until 5 minutes before you're going to serve the meatloaf, and then just heat it up again.
Okay, I guess we can edit that out.
We're just a few minutes before the meatloaf's going to be cooked. So what I want to do is take the meatloaf in the loaf pan out and put it on the hot pad. Take the meat out of the loaf pan and let it sit for 5 minutes while I'm heating up the gravy. Then we'll be ready to eat.
Okay, so here we are, about 30 seconds to go, and the oven timer should go off any minute, actually, shouldn't it?
Of course, while we're waiting, it could take forever, but we'll just, it's so close, I'm actually going to take the meatloaf out before the timer goes off.
Wow.
I know, pretty risky. There it goes, the timer. And there is a gorgeous meatloaf, which we now just want to put onto the heating pad and let sit for 5 minutes. Actually, we'll take it out of the fat for a second. The meatloaf has just come out of the oven, and there's very little chance of it sticking, but we just want to run a knife around to make sure. And then we're going to take a couple of forks and try and lift it out in one piece. If it feels like it's going to break apart, stop. Yeah, that looks a little crumbly, so we'll just give it a little bit of a lift there, and then lift it out. There we go. It's going to sit for 5 minutes now before we serve it while we heat up the gravy. I just turned the heat back on the gravy to start heating it up again. And just a word to the wise is, if your gravy's a little bit too thick for you, and this isn't, just the way I like it, but if you like it a bit thinner, you can add a bit more water at this point in time. But we've turned the heat on, and we're going to put the lid back on and let her heat up just for a couple of minutes until it just starts to steam again. Okay, the gravy is just bubbling again, which means it's ready to turn the heat off and put it in your serving bowl. My good friend Bill doesn't have a gravy boat, so we're just going to use a bowl because we have no class, but we know good food. Now that the meatloaf's had a chance to sit for a couple minutes, it'll be a little bit firmer, and we're just going to take some slices off of it. Sadly, all meatloaf that's really moist is a little crumbly, so we're just going to put some on a plate like that. Cut it off in about 3/4 inch slices and arrange it nicely on your plate. Don't worry about this stuff that comes off, just put it underneath and put another slice on top of it. And when you've got enough slices to serve however many people you've got at the table, then you're done. So this is Bill. We're just about to tuck into the meatloaf. Cheers. Salante, bit of green salad, a roll, good friend, wine, and meatloaf with onion gravy.
I'll drink to that.
You can make it.
Of course, I'll drink to most anything.